Dunkin' has a whole new line of handcrafted signature lattes. Blueberry Crisp, Caramel Craze, and Cocoa Mocha. They're so delicious, you'll realize that you've been spending a whole latte time drinking the wrong coffee. So even though you've been together for years, it's time to say goodbye to your ex. Coffee Place. Because you've got a latte love for Dunkin's signature lattes. Sipping is believing with Dunkin's new handcrafted signature lattes, like Blueberry Crisp, Caramel Craze, or Cocoa Mocha. America runs on Dunkin'. Price and participation may vary. Limited time offer.
Valley, hooey Hollywood, where any office boy or young mechanic can be a panic with just a good-looking pan. And any barmaid can be a star maid if she dances with or without a plan. Hooray for Hollywood, where you're terrific if you're even good. Where anyone at all from Shirley Temple to Amy Semple is equally understood. Go out and try your luck.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, you are listening to a Radulich Broadcasting premiere podcast, Damn You Hollywood. And here's your host, and let me just say that he's the best combat vet I've ever seen. A pure fighting machine with only a desire to win a war that someone else lost. And if winning means Robert Winfree has to die, he'll die. No fear, no regrets, and one more thing. What you choose to call hell, he calls Damn You Hollywood. Ladies and gentlemen, Robert Winfree.
You know, that works out a little bit okay. I was waiting for you to crash and burn, and you pulled off a solid 6.5 out of 10.
Well, that's me all over. 6.5 out of 10. I think that might be the best introduction I've ever done for you.
Well, you didn't stumble, and it was relatively accurate, because this show is my personal hell.
Took me all of 10 minutes to find that. But damn it, it was worth it.
I had to sit here and listen to him go, nope, wrong movie, nope, wrong movie, where's the line, where's the line, where's the line? Anyway, everyone, welcome to Damn You Hollywood. As mentioned, I am Robert Winfree. Chuckles McGee over there is Mark Radulich.
Hi!
And tonight we're discussing, if you're unfamiliar with the bit of dialogue that was cribbed there and repurposed by Mark, we're reviewing Rambo Last Blood. Yeah, that's about all I got on this one, guys.
So,
Mark, I have to ask this.
Okay.
I do have to ask this very briefly.
Sure.
Normally you put crap like this on the schedule, and
Sure.
let me be clear, I did not object to this being on the schedule. Okay? This is not me going, I told you for months this was going to be terrible. Not the case. Expected it, wasn't complaining about it. Normally it's so you can try and build these stupid theme weeks.
Yeah.
You've already talked about Rambo on every other platform prior to this month. Like, every other major property we do here has done something on Rambo to this point. You couldn't rehash any of it. There's not an on trial. There's not a source material you can do. There's not even a equivalent of Austrian Death Machine, but for Sylvester Stallone, although there should be, to do on Metal Hammer of Doom.
Right.
So, what? Why?
Well, I mean, obviously it's a franchise. It's a beloved franchise for most people who work with me, including myself. I mean, the Rambo movies are some of my favorites. We talked before the podcast started about how the story of John Rambo, the disenchanted, more on that this week,
Heyo.
the disenchanted, disaffected, disillusioned Vietnam vet who tries to come home to find a world that hates him, has a very nice arc if you just drop 3 from the continuity.
And this one.
And, well, this was before this one. So, you know, First Blood Part, Rambo, First Blood Part 2, and then Rambo, which takes place in Burma and deals with the Christian missionaries, where at the very end, he is convinced by the female Christian missionary that the world will love him. Enough time has passed. He can go home again. His personal war needs to end for his own soul. And so he does. And there's this great shot of him pulling up to his father's home with a mailbox that reads Rambo. And it didn't. The franchise obviously didn't need to go any further. The story was told. It was told lovely. And
I mean, again, putting aside some of the graphic violence, which I love, by the way, I'm not saying it's terrible, but if it is those three movies tell a very compelling and a very touching, in many respects, story.
I think people who haven't seen the Rambo movies but kind of equate Rambo with what was made fun of in movies like Hot Fuzz.
Hot Shots.
Sorry, Hot Shots. Sorry, not Hot Fuzz. Hot Shots and...
Which is hilarious. Those two movies are hilarious, by the way.
They are. But I think if you walk up to the average person and say, Rambo, first thing that comes to your head, guy, large machine gun, blowing away large swaths of jungle. And if you watch the movies critically, what you see is embedded in the character is someone dealing with post-traumatic stress disorder. If you read about the history of First Blood, yet another movie that was saved in editing, by the way.
No kidding. I mean, Sylvester Stallone has actually talked about this. There's because he did some of the editing on it and said, I want to cut all of my lines. And they cut they cut something like 80% of his spoken dialogue that was recorded, and it works beautifully.
It really does, because Stallone, for again somebody who is constantly made fun of for his inability to speak dialogue coherently, acts very well with his eyes, especially in a movie like First Blood.
And again, for as much as we kind of joke about his speech patterns, when he does, Rambo as a character has two of the best moments in film. When he breaks down to Troutman at the end of First Blood, his monologue is... And again, you may not get it all the first time you listen to it because you're trying to kind of decipher what Stallone is saying, but it actually works in the context of this guy suffering this breakdown.
Yeah, it's not one of those where the content is so much as important as is the delivery and the performance. He's
so good.
He's talking about coming home from Nam and people spitting on him.
Over there, I was in charge of multi-million-dollar equipment. I could drive a tank. Here, I can't even hold down a job parking cars.
Right. It's a monologue that Troutman asked him, "Don't you love your country?" And he was like, "I would die for this country. It's this country that doesn't love me." See, it's very upsetting for me. That whole bit. I've always had. I'm not an army person, but a lot of people in my family are military. A lot of people who have surrounded me in my life are military, and it's always been a thing that breaks my heart how soldiers can be treated and have been treated in this country. So I think that's one of the reasons why it affects me the way that it does, and why I watch that. I mean, because you watch it and it's kind of a slasher movie, right? All these Rambo movies kind of are slasher movies. He's a monster running around killing various people, especially the first one.
He kills one hang on. In First Blood, he inadvertently kills a grand total of one person.
Yeah, but he's hurting a lot of cops in that movie.
He causes damage, okay? I'm not saying he doesn't.
I was going to say, when he starts setting up booby traps in the, I guess it would be the forest.
In the forest, yeah.
Yeah, there's a one point spikes come out of the thing and hits a guy and,
in the thighs.
Yeah, okay, fine. Killing, strong word. But kind of a slasher movie. It's a lot of Rambo kind of jumping out of the wilderness and hitting people with a knife. The second one's just kind of a straightforward, more of a Chuck Norris, Delta Force kind of action movie. Same thing with the third one.
Now, the second one is where he racks up his body count because his rampage across Vietnam. This is for those of you who have never read the books, First Blood, written by David Morrell, actually has a very different tenor to it. Rambo does kill all of the cops except the chief, who manages to escape. And he actually like levels the entire town before
Yeah.
he and the sheriff kill each other. Is how the novel ends.
So that's where we were going with this conversation. The story of Rambo. There was a really great book I read about how the portrayal of the military through film and how it's evolved over the years. There was the portrayal, I want to say, in like the 70s, and I think like Rambo's First Blood's at like the tail end of it, where all the soldiers are dealing with PTSD and they're all disaffected and disillusioned and shitty, and you know, it's the presentation of the soldier on film from Hollywood's perspective is very bleak and very negative. It's the
I
80s,
blame Oliver Stone.
It's the 80s that turns them into Supermen. And you kind of see that transition in Rambo himself, where First Blood is depressing in
Very.
terms of what happens to this particular character. Patrick weighs in and says, it's Death Wish meets Home Alone in the best way possible.
That's about right, actually. That's fair.
Anyway, it's Rambo Part 2 that kind of makes the transition from bleak to Superman, which this book that I'm talking about really breaks down the transition of the soldier through film throughout the years. So, getting to the point and getting to Last Blood, which is why we're here tonight.
Kind of funny that we've kind of come back around on that it seems to be a purely cyclical thing.
You have, by the time you get, just sort of tracing Rambo's history, he comes back from Vietnam, he's visiting a friend in West Virginia, he's seen as a vagrant and a ne'er-do-well, and so Brian Dennehy takes him out of town, and he comes back, and that's what gets the action going. At the end of it, he goes to prison, after he mutilates
he damages a lot of cops, he blows up part of the town, like he does a lot of damage, but he does live.
After he mutilates...
sorry. My point to all of that was Morrell wrote the novelization for First Blood Part 2 and is able to go into more detail in the way that a novel is about the rampage he goes on after he is betrayed by the government. And the body count he racks up is catastrophically high.
So that we can get to the film, tracing the sort of lineage of the narrative. So he destroys this town, hurts a bunch of cops, and he goes to prison, which is where we find him, and Troutman says, okay, here's the deal. You can get out of prison, but we want you to do a mission in Vietnam where he's only supposed to take pictures of a POW camp. Of course, he doesn't find the camp to be empty. He learns that the camps are sometimes empty because they rotate the prisoners through a series of camps. In any case, on this particular day, he finds the camp full of prisoners, and he tries to get them out of there, at which point Murdoch says, abort the mission and leave the man stranded because this is a problem. Fast forward.
He wasn't supposed to find anyone. He was supposed to find an empty camp.
Right. So they could show pictures of an empty camp saying there's nobody there. See, the war's over. Everything's fine. They were nobody was put in concentration camps. We all had tea.
We have always been at war with Eurasia. What?
So anyway, of course, Rambo then comes back to the base with all the POWs, like you do. And
goes on a bloody rampage. Saves all the POWs.
Right. But then walks away, and we find him sort of traipsing about Thailand in the third movie. There's no point getting into deep depth with the third movie. Just know he's in Thailand, kind of living off the grid, where Troutman attempts to re-enlist him, and then when Troutman gets into trouble, he goes and saves Troutman in Afghanistan. Back to Thailand.
The only good thing about 3, I think, there's actually a line from Troutman when he tries to recruit Rambo. He just tells him, because he's living in a monastery at the time, you've not actually made peace with yourself, buddy. You're hiding.
Right.
And Rambo's response is basically, yeah, I can keep doing it, so good luck to you.
Yeah.
But he does give him the advice that I think remains extremely relevant to the character through the rest of the iterations that we're dealing with. You will never be at peace until you make peace with the fact that you are capable of these terrible things. You've done these terrible things, and that is part of who you are. You can't just hide from it.
Right.
Until you reconcile that, you're never going to find peace. It will never be over for you until you choose to end it.
Which brings us to Rambo, which is 4. And again, he's traipsing about Asia. He's leading he's leading an expedition of Christian missionaries in Burma. All hell breaks loose. He ends up having to
Burma's a war zone.
He ends up having to save the Christian missionaries from certain death in Burma. But this is where we get the bit of exchange between him and the female Christian missionary who basically says, "You have been away for a long time. The world has moved on. You're the one still holding a grudge." Fast forward to the end of the movie and lots of deaths. He goes home.
I love that final battle sequence so much. It's so good.
So it's a very poignant end, and I'm going through this so that you, as a listener, you understand that this isn't just a series of action movies. Dropping the third one out for a moment and just focusing on 1, 2, and 4. It's the story of a soldier who feels betrayed by his country, betrayed by his countrymen, and has been once bitten, twice shy. And when he comes home, it's truly the end of his journey. He feels at peace with the world, he feels at peace with himself, and there's no more story left to tell. Except there's money on the table. and so we're going to come up with a story. And that brings us to Last Blood. Now, the story on Last Blood is that they wanted to use this as a vehicle. And we really do need to break this down because it's a major problem with the film. They wanted to use Last Blood not just to unearth this character because still, there's money in reboots and dusting off old characters and throwing them out there. That's why the Expendables movies make money. He was successful with Rocky Balboa and the 2 Creed movies. This isn't an issue with Kraft. They were monetarily successful.
I know what you're saying. I wasn't going to interrupt you.
Okay. So it's kind of, let's see what other beloved things from the 80s and 90s we can unearth and see if they'll make money. I
suppose personally, the supreme irony for me is that Rambo 2008 comes out around the same time as Rocky Balboa, and felt like it did feel like he was giving closure to a lot of those characters.
Yeah.
And then for some reason, 11 years later, now here we are again.
So they're using this unearthing of the Rambo character to tell the story of human trafficking. It's an editorial, or it's meant to be. In pre-production, it was a editorial on the horrors of human trafficking, specifically the United States-Mexico border.
Look, politics aside, the border is currently a catastrophe. And again, you can blame whatever way your political leanings choose. But, I leave that up to you. I think we can all safely agree it's not a good situation right now.
No. And again, we'll get into the critical reviews of this because it needs to be dealt with in its own little chapter of this review.
Oh, my God. I walked out of this movie, and if I hadn't already known what the critics were whining about, I would have known after I walked out of the movie. Like, oh, I know exactly what everyone's going to be complaining about. And it has nothing to do with the craft of the movie.
Right. Here, the fact of the matter is, human trafficking does happen. There are Mexicans who are involved in human trafficking, and it is happening to young women in both the United States and Mexico at a bare minimum. These are facts. Yeah. So this movie seeks to take those facts and fashion a Rambo story out of it. And it's always Rambo going into a combat zone of some sort. Well, after the first one. The first one kind of put that to the side. But 2, 3, and 4, it's Rambo going into a militarized zone and killing everybody around him. And
it starts with, okay, Rambo goes in, and you're in an advisory role. Here's this relatively small thing we want you to do, and yes, you can defend yourself if necessary, but you shouldn't need to worry about it. We expect only a small amount of the enemy. And then everything goes sideways, and his response is, all right, everybody's dying. I've had it up to here with this. We're just gonna stack them up like cordwood.
The Rambo Last Blood, and I'm going to pitch it over to Robert in just a second to do the plot synopsis, such as it is, turns the Rambo story of war zone, Rambo, insert Rambo in Warzone, dead. Just death everywhere. And they turn it on its head and say, what if we talked about the horrors of human trafficking and then we create a situation where death comes to Rambo, who's just trying to live his life. It's kind of a, I tried to get out, but they pulled me back in. It's this weird concept of what if Rambo is the living embodiment of death, and no matter what he does, as he says in the movie, he's just trying to keep a lid on it. No matter what he does, he can't escape it. If he won't go to it, it will come to him. These are the pillars of this story. How successful they were at at editorializing on human trafficking, I think we can all agree it's bad.
Is there any look? The only people this is one of those things that always kind of bothers me when people try to politicize. It's up there with sexual assault. Like, the only people pro sexual assault are rapists, like Bill Clinton.
Yeah.
Bad joke aside.
Bill Clinton was a rapist.
Is
a rapist. Well,
he's still alive.
Well, I mean, I don't know if he's currently raping people. Is my only point.
Look, he's still alive. Consequently, He remains a rapist. And again, the point being, no one's actually in favor of these things, and the fact that we, for some reason, try to politicize them, if you have a slightly different perspective than me on this position, then boy, you sure must be in favor of Harvey Weinstein continuing to exist. Okay, wow, you took 2 + 2 and came up with shoes. Good job. Look, again, no one's pro-human trafficking except human traffickers.
I'm not even sure a lot of them are pro it. I think it's more of just a means to an end.
Sure, there's very few international criminal organizations that is their primary method of monetization.
I was going to say that they would, that if forced to have an intellectual discussion of it, okay, everyone take a drink. I think, in The Wire, when they're defending drug dealing as a means to an end, there's something to the effect of, this is us, this is our culture, this is okay because you've made it okay by creating the situations in which we all gravitate to drug dealing. I don't think human trafficking has ever been intellectualized. I don't think there's a human trafficker that's going, well, human trafficking is the thing that exists, and I gravitated towards it because of the circumstances of my surrounding. Pretty sure they just went, I got to get paid. The drugs seem a bit flooded. I'm going to go steal women and sell them.
That's probably accurate.
Can you imagine someone sitting around a table and just sort of justifying it outside of the need to make money? So,
you want to know hold on. The sad thing is I can, because I think the worst of humanity.
It's hard for me to picture that, I guess.
Sometime offline, I will adopt the pro position just to kind of rattle your cage a little bit.
Good, do it in the Boogie Nights chat. So that way, the people
Darn right.
in that will be right along with you as I mute the conversation. All right. So, without further ado, the review.
Point being, that's roughly that's the context that is necessary to kind of come to this story, such as it is.
Is this movie successful in editorializing in a meaningful way the horror that is human trafficking? And does the idea of, if he won't go to it, death will come to him, work in terms of an entertaining story? And does it serve this character well, or was this a giant waste of time? We will answer those questions momentarily, but first, Robert will tell you what happens in this movie.
We will try to answer those questions to the best of our abilities. The extent to which we are successful, I leave up to you, the listener. All right. So 11 years after the events of Rambo, he was borderline too old to be Rambo in 2008. I just want to say that. And look, I kind of thought that, and then I saw Sylvester Stallone in the movie and went, oh, okay. No, he's not ripped anymore, but he still has the physicality to pull this off when used appropriately, and I think it was in that movie.
You know what's so hilarious, though? Like Sylvester Stallone's not a tall man. We've talked about this with the Rocky movies, that if he were really to fight at his weight, he'd be like a welterweight, not a heavyweight. but he's made to look like he's 8 feet tall in these movies.
Yeah, he is. They do a lot to kind of give him presence. Because, look, most actors are less than 6 feet tall.
Sure. I'm like, he's not Tom Cruise short, but he's
No.
shorter than what's presented on film.
Yeah. I mean, look, Peter Dinklage is barely Tom Cruise short. I mean, come on.
Go on.
So anyway, 11 years after the events of the previous movie, John Rambo is living on his horse ranch in Arizona that he manages with his old friend, apparently, and her granddaughter, Gabriella. And as with all father-daughter sort of relationships, Gabriella's about to has graduated from high school recently and is looking to go to college and leave the nest, and Rambo's going a little bit of the empty nester. He's built, can I just say, his series of tunnels under his property, genuinely great.
Yeah.
Hilarious, but great.
I love that whole thing. Like, and it's so funny. Like, why'd you build these tunnels? Like digging. Like,
well,
okay.
no, like they asked. The best thing about that is, Gabriella is asked by her friends, "Why are there these tunnels?" And the answer she gives them is, "Well, my uncle is a little crazy and likes digging."
Yeah.
And his response is, "That's about right."
Yeah. It was something along those lines, but I also like the fact that he's got a forge in there, where he's making knives, which is fantastic.
I've done a little bit of that, not a lot, and I regret not finishing the amount that I have done, but it's a lot of fun, actually.
Do you have a bunch of unfinished knives lying around your house?
One or two.
Oh,
not a lot.
Okay.
And they're not that big. Like, I was barely kind of getting into it, so I'm doing like, paring knives and stuff like that. Nothing huge.
Gotcha. There's no like broadswords lying around.
Oh no. Well, no unfinished ones.
Yeah.
Look, I'm not going to say I don't own a broadsword, okay?
Of course you do.
Because I might.
I mean, like an unhilted broadsword you're still in the middle of forging.
No. Nothing like that.
Okay.
I wish, man. I really do. Anyway. So she is apparently Gabriella is dealing with a bit of unresolved issues because her father up and left her after her mother died of cancer, or shortly before that, something along those lines. And she has her somewhat sketchy friend Giselle locate him in Mexico because she wants answers. And both John and her grandmother say, "This is a bad idea. What's he going to tell you?" John at one point just tells her he's not a good man. The response to this is, "It can't be that simple." Like, sometimes it is. Like, he just ran off because he's a scumbag. Do you want, like, not every bit of the human condition is all that nuanced. You can just let it go. You don't need to. This is an unnecessary thing, and she goes anyway, being a headstrong teenager. Giselle has, in fact, located her father. Her father tells her, "I never wanted you. I never really loved you or your mother. Then she up and died and left me with you. You don't ever have to come back here." And he kicks a puppy at some point. I mean, they go out of their way to make this guy just like the biggest douchebag. I mean, I was trying to come up with some other bit of dialogue that he could have said there. And I'm not even joking when I say that's what he says to her.
Kicks a puppy. Says he's in the scene. He's wearing a MAGA hat. I mean, it was just well, I make that joke because people listening to this, I think more often than not, are going to be anti-Trump than Trump. But
the supreme irony of that is you voted for him.
I know I did. Talked about that on Politics, which will be dropping this Thursday.
And you know what? Let's be fair. You're probably going to vote for him again.
Well, he's going to win again. Whether or not I vote for him, I'm probably voting. Well, I know I'm voting for. I actually registered Democrat for the purposes of voting for Andrew Yang in the primaries. But when he doesn't win,
what a giant waste of time.
And when he doesn't win because Joe Biden wins, I will once again be voting for.
You
Trump.
know what? I don't even think Biden takes it at this point. He's floundering.
Okay, we're going to get sidetracked here.
Politics aside.
Yes, I made a bad Trump joke because the gag here is that everyone, half the people view Trump very negatively. So if you think in terms of douchebags, that's where that came from. Moving on from my terrible joke.
Look, I would have said he could have been wearing a Che Guevara shirt.
It would be funny if he's wearing.
Because really, in all seriousness, what kind of jackasses wear Che Guevara shirts?
What if he was wearing a MAGA hat, a Che Guevara shirt, and a members-only jacket, and Z Cavaricis?
There we go. With
Perfect.
a fanny pack, and he's kicked a puppy. There
Right.
we go.
And
We have a
underneath the Z Cavaricis, he's wearing Zubu pants.
Yes. Hell yes. and oh no, he's got like socks with those like Adidas sandals.
Oh, and he's wearing what are those furry boots called?
Uggs.
He's wearing Uggs.
Okay, yeah, we have now created. Everyone on God's green earth can agree that is a douchebag. Okay, there we go. And again, I joke about that, but in all seriousness, he sees his daughter for the first time in years, and he tells her, "I left because I didn't want you or her. You didn't mean anything to me. I realized I was wasting my time and my energy being there. Then she dies and leaves me with you, who I never wanted. Yeah, I left. That answer your questions? Good. Leave and you never have to come back here." Actually, his dialogue. She's upset. She tries to head back and realizes that, yes, the people who had more life experience than me were correct about this situation. Giselle goes, no, look, you can't drive back. It's dark. You're all messed up. It wouldn't be safe. Let's go get drunk, because then you can drive.
At a Mexican bar.
And while there, Gabriella is drugged and abducted because Giselle is a scumbag who sold her out for jewelry and payoff, I guess. I don't know. It's never firmly established what she got out of that. John, after realizing that, yes, she's gone, and Giselle actually called them to give them a heads up about Gabriella being missing, John decides, all right, I ain't having none of this. He saddles up in his truck and he heads down to get her back. This goes back. He accosts Giselle, whose lack of bullet to the face by the end of this movie I found very disconcerting. Like, she should have been shot. He accosts a low-level pimp, goes to confront a couple of high-profile, like, cartel members. This goes about as well as you might expect, considering the utter lack of plan, Mark.
Man Crazy has no plan. And if you're wondering, if you haven't seen the movie, but you're just interested to see what we thought about it, if you have watched either The Dark Crystal or Age of Resistance, picture Saldana confronting the Skeksis about draining the Gelfling, and then when the Skeksis jumped on top of her, because that's about how this goes, complete with laughter.
Yeah, he shows up and gets the crap kicked out of him. An independent journalist who exists purely for the purpose of Deus Ex Machina shows up and helps recuperate him, but these scumbag brothers in charge of this cartel group realize who he was trying to save, and one of them tells him, she was just gonna exist. Like, women in her position mean nothing to us. They're less than our trained dogs. But now that I know who she is and that she means something to you, I'm going to ruin her life even more than it is already. And I want you to think about that every day until you die. Because, you know what, at least his brother is sitting there talking comments that's like, just kill him. What are we doing here? But in classic villain fashion, he does not kill the hero when given the opportunity.
No, instead he is chained up and put into some sort of device where he is slowly lowered into lava. But he's able to get into his... Oh, wait a minute. That's Batman in the 60s.
That's not just Batman in the 60s. Let's be fair. That's every Batman.
True. And
every
some James Bond.
Oh, it's all... Look, every James Bond, every Batman. No, Bane, I will not kill you. You're the only person who can potentially stop me. I want you to suffer, and then you have my permission to die. Even though I could have just broken your neck and made my life infinitely easier. But no. Or Joker, hey, I could kill you, but boy, what would I do without you? Go back to robbing up mob bosses? Like, oh god, you're all pathetic. Contrivances for the Mary Sue in the cowl. Yay.
So there lies Rambo convalescing on
Rambo convalesces. Gabriella is hooked on heroin and pimped out, and it takes him about 4 days to kind of get back on his feet after the beating, which is a shockingly fast recovery rate, but good for him.
It's a good thing his mutant healing factor was still working, unlike Logan's.
You know, in all fairness, it works about as well as Wolverine's and Logan's.
Well, no, but they made a point of saying his healing factor would slow down. This man suffers facial scarring and being kicked repeatedly from head to toe in 4 days. His mutant healing factor is fine.
Yeah, I don't know how many of you have been, hit really, really hard like that, but sometimes the swelling is barely down in 4 days, which is not a good sign, mind you, but it does happen. Anyway, he implores the independent journalist who is investigating these people, not actually for a story, but more because they abducted and did the same thing to her sister, and now she wants vengeance, but is largely impotent. So she does kind of point him to the whorehouse in question. Rambo goes all old boy with a claw hammer through everybody there, which was kind of great. Does find Gabriella, gets her into his truck, starts heading back home. She dies along the way. He gets all the way home. They bury her. He sends her grandmother away and decides, you know what? Vengeance shall be mine. I am death. They will know my pain, and it will be the last thing they ever feel. Heads back down to Mexico with nothing but knives in a very badass sequence that I wish we'd seen more of. Cuts through one of the brothers' entourage and then decapitates him, dumps his head on the highway as he's driving down. That was so great. To incite the remaining brother to gather everyone up and bring them back to his... Because they stole his identification when they accosted him the first time, so they know where he lives. They all saddle up, go through a tunnel under the border, drive onto his property, but John Rambo has had enough time to prepare. How much time is deeply unclear. Time's a little bit funky in this movie. He proceeds to set off a bunch of his booby traps. He massacres all of them. He deliberately saves this final cartel head for last, then pins him to a door with arrows and brutally carves out his heart with his knife.
And shows him said heart.
Well, that's kind of the point.
I mean, like
if the guy whose heart you're yanking out is not conscious long enough to actually see you holding it, you have wasted your time.
Yeah.
I mean, at that point, there's no reason to actually yank it out.
So there are two endings to this movie. Ending one is after he's done massacred everybody and carved out this guy's
He
heart.
literally sits on his porch and vows to continue fighting for the memory of all the friends and loved ones that he's lost.
Then there's a montage,
which was actually better than most of the movie. I got more emotional watching that montage than I did watching the movie.
And in the final sequence of the montage, he literally saddles up a horse and rides into fuck all.
Into the sunset.
Yeah. So the sunset, fuck all, the woods to live deliberately, choose your ending.
And that's where things end. Okay. I'm going to start here, just very briefly.
Okay.
This is not a well put together movie.
No, it isn't.
The time frame is never exactly clear. At some points they want to be very specific with their chronology. At others, it's kind of whatever. I mean, you're not entirely sure how long things have been going on, how much time has passed. The dialogue is not especially good, which is kind of sad, because even when his dialogue is more, short and clipped, a lot of Rambo's other dialogue has been pretty great, even when it's comedic. I mean, I always laugh in Rambo 3 when he's going through his gear with his escort, and he comes to the like snapping and the chemical lights, and this is a blue light, and the guy goes, "What's it do?" Turns blue. Or, I mean, one of my favorite lines from him is actually in John Rambo when the missionaries are trying to hire him to take them into Burma, and he's like, I don't really want to do this. Who are you? We're Christian missionaries. We're trying to go in. We're providing relief and medical supplies. And are you bringing any weapons in? No, of course not. You're not changing anything then, man.
Murdoch, you're not coming to get me. I'm coming to get you.
He at least normally has decent lines of dialogue, and here it just feels overwrought and melodramatic.
Colonel, do we get the win this time? It's entirely up to you, Rambo. Dun 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 dun.
You see, that's actually kind of, for that character, it makes sense for him to ask that.
Mission accomplished.
Okay, are you done now?
Yes, I'm done.
Okay. As long as you're done. So, again, his dialogue here isn't all that great. There's not a lot of time there's not a lot given to the other characters, and even in Rambo, where the big bad guy is just a Burmese warlord, there's a couple of scenes with him. I mean, there's the one scene where he massacres a couple of villages to establish who he is. Then there's actually the scene where they're breaking everyone out of prison and they're all engaging in various levels of debauchery. And you just see that he orders a young boy, that one of his subordinates brings a young boy to his cabin. That's really all that needs to be said there. And again, he's not given backstory. I'm not asking for the world here. There's enough provided to give him context outside of his relationship with Rambo. He is a person that exists in the world. I'm not sure these chuckleheads do. Like, they exist when they come on screen and they stop existing when they leave it, and I mean that as an absolute negative in this instance.
Did we really need the speech about how women are less than dogs? Wasn't that pretty evident in what they were doing? This is the ultimate show don't tell movie in terms of they did nothing but tell you and didn't trust the audience to see what they were showing.
Yeah, I mean, I get that the villain is monologuing there, and I'm okay with a good villain monologue. Like, that's fine. But it did seem a bit redundant. Like, he doesn't need to go into detail, he just needs to... I feel like there's a better way to do that. What was her name? Carmen? Again, she exists just to dump exposition. Like, she doesn't actually serve a purpose. She doesn't relate to the character beyond like the basest superficial, boy, these people sure do suck. They've taken someone from each of us.
Well, she exists as a plot contrivance, because I don't even think she was written into to dump dialogue. I think they wrote themselves into a corner when they were like, what if Rambo marches into an enemy camp with no weapons and no plan, and then this will really shock the audience. They kick the fuck out of him.
It's as though these people have never seen a Rambo movie before. Your hero has to be disadvantaged at some point in order to overcome something. That's the nature of... If your hero is never at a loss, is never made to be in danger, you have a Mary Sue, not a hero.
But it was like, okay, well, now he's lying dead. He's lying half dead on the ground. What are we going to do to get him to the point where he's going to rig up the house and all of that, and before that, save the girl? And they're like, well, someone will save him.
We need a good Samaritan.
Yeah.
Well, who's going to be a good Samaritan in this part of the... And let me be clear, when I say this part of the world, I don't mean Mexico. I mean this particular subset of this city in Mexico.
Yeah.
That exact same philosophy applies to plenty of locations everywhere around the world. Like, you can find... I guarantee you will find, areas in every major metropolitan city in the United States.
I was going to say, I feel like there's a scene in Menace to Society where I think the kid gets, beaten up pretty badly or whatever, and he ends up in what appears to be like an enemy camp, and like I feel like it's Menace to Society. I'd have to rewatch it again. I know you haven't seen it. But like, you know, like the gang members like come out and like you think they're gonna like murder the kid, but they actually like take care of him. Again, Good Samaritan. In any place in the world that is bleak, there is one person doing a good deed. That was it. And this can happen anywhere. To be clear, that's what we're trying to say here. But yeah. I do feel like she was written in a second or third draft when they were like, we don't know how to get him off the ground at this point. Well, it would have been helpful if they hadn't written that in the first place, but I digress.
Yeah, it's like, well, we don't want to rewrite this to make it make sense, so we'll just throw this in there. So, this is just not a very good movie. That said, when it gets going with the actual action sequences, which is sadly the only thing done competently, it's kind of fun. That's the point when I started engaging with the movie in a lot of respects. Most of the action is relatively well shot, is very readable. Even the stuff in the tunnels, which is where most of the people die. It would have been unbelievably easy for that sequence to be a garbled mess visually. And it's not. It's very, very readable. So I do want to give them credit for that. Because I've seen plenty of tunnel shootouts in movies. Most of them are terrible.
All right. I have a lot of problems with this movie. The action's not really one of them. Here's the problem, and I was telling Robert this offline. I won't use the sort of gross sexual thing I was going to say about what this movie felt like to me. Instead, I will say that it feels like a very, very long, slow build to one explosion of violence. But even though you have the hammer sequence, you have the sequence when he leading up to him beheading one of the villains, and then you have the final raid on the house. They all kind of come in rapid succession, and it's a long build up to that point. So this movie is paced like shit. First of all, second of all, while I don't have a problem with making human traffickers look like evil people, regardless of their race.
They are, regardless of their race. If you're a human trafficker, you're a giant scumbag who should be killed.
Yeah. On the other hand, I don't know many human traffickers who are prone to dramatic expanses of dialogue. I understand the need to do a dramatic presentation to a degree, but here's the thing. Sometimes a villain can just be presence. You don't need to muck it up with dialogue. And I guess if you have Sergio Perez Manchetta, who can also be seen in Snowfall, I guess you want to use him. I mean, I don't know if it's like a SAG thing or whatever, but on the other hand, I don't think it lended anything to the presentation. We got it. They're human traffickers. Nothing about them will be good. Like, you know, if you showed them talking to their mother and having tamales, it still would have been bad. They're still bad dudes. We don't need, you know, like the scene where, again, Man Crazy has no plan, and I'm going to get to the lead up to that in a second, which I had a major problem with. But, so Rambo just fucking waltzes in to this enemy camp, and it's a scene that goes unnecessarily long, because the villains are just going on and on and on. And it's like, there's other shows and movies that have shown Mexican mobsters and have done a much better job of at least approximating reality. They're not, again, given to these large swaths of overdramatic dialogue. They just shoot the fucking people. And even if you don't want to necessarily shoot Rambo, like, I would have, like, in this particular case, I would have been okay with a John Wick thing. Shoot him twice and throw him off the building, and somehow he lives. I'd have been okay with that. He's Superman. I get it. But, yeah, they made the villains, like, over the top. They made the dad over the top. It was just like, everyone is so over the top shitty, it took me out of the movie. But even before that, so you have Like, the leading is you're getting first. The character of the niece in this case, it's not really his niece, but he sort of treats her that way. Gosh, what's her name?
The actress?
Yvonne Marilla's Gabriella.
I'm sorry.
I was confused.
Do the first name again, please.
Yvette.
You said Yvonne.
Did I? I meant
You
Yvette.
did.
So Gabriella, who I had to read it because I didn't want to say Giselle. I was getting the two characters confused. So Gabriella, they don't do a great job of establishing her character. She's just kind of given just enough character to where you're going to feel bad eventually when they kill her with heroin. And you're scared for her when she's in this terrible plight. But I kind of think no matter who they put in that situation, you as an audience member would have felt bad for. And so her character is essentially damsel in distress who makes bad decision. That's all there is to this. So again, this movie clocks in at about 89 minutes, okay? 1 minute shy of an average 90-minute mark movie. And it's as if to say, we just want to get to Rambo killing people. That's all people showed up for, which is why, as many problems as I have with this movie, that's the one thing I'll forgive it for is like, let me get there. But they don't take any time to establish her as a character. They don't take a whole lot of time really establishing this family. I didn't understand who the grandmother character was. Like, I thought like maybe that was an extended part of John Rambo's family, and then I had to read the Wikipedia page. Like, oh, it's his longtime friend. How? Oh.
He's been out of the country for most of his life. Like,
was that a housekeeper? Like, what the fuck?
Look, this movie, and this is a major, major failure of the writing. Everything in this movie is presented purely as it relates to Rambo, and only in the briefest possible sense.
Yeah, it's literally like
there's no sense of any of these characters. Again, there's no sense of of who these characters are, absent how they relate to Rambo. Well, and that's a major failing.
It's like if you ever played the board game Mousetrap, where you have to go through this elongated setup with these little things that all.
I have played a lot of Mousetrap.
What is it, Rube Goldberg machine, essentially, that this marble travels through. That's all they are. They're just like little bits of this individual machine that all lead to Rambo going on a murder rampage. So anyway, there's not a single good character in the bunch. I put this off long enough. I need to talk about this. I need to get this out of my mind. The thing I hated about this movie is if you're sitting around a writer's room and you're like, let's unearth the Rambo character. Okay, we've kind of told his story, so at this point he has to be a vehicle for an issue we want to talk about. Can't really do PTSD anymore. We did that already. That was his story. Well, what else is out there? And you're just kind of like going through a list of things, and someone shoots out, how about human trafficking? Okay. So far, I'm with you.
Yeah, this is all okay so far. I mean, the bare bones of this story are not the worst.
So, if you're going to do human trafficking, fucking do it. Show it all. Spend some time with these characters. Spend some time going through the process of getting girls and where they go. Some of them go here. Some of them stay in a brothel there. Show the drugs. Spend time in this world. You introduce a journalist character. Show her, like, in an office somewhere working on a story and working with an editor.
Mark, she's an independent journalist.
Oh, Jesus Christ. Talk about the issue. Talk about the problems with the issue. Talk about why this is such a hard thing to get a handle on. Why you have uncooperative governments. Why you have uncooperative police forces. Why, human trafficking is a problem that is global. It's been going on for a very long time. It involves
the entirety of human history.
It involves children, boys and girls, all the way up through, young men and young women. It involves all races. Okay, talk about the disease. These are all, if you're going to do this, don't give it short shrift. Or don't fucking put it in a Rambo movie if the person sitting across from you, as I'm saying all this is saying, but it's Rambo and nobody wants to deal with anything important. Nobody coming to see a Rambo movie wants to be lectured about the horrors of violence. They just want to see Rambo kill people. So who are some of the most evil people on Earth? Human traffickers. And I feel like that's all the thought they put into this.
I think you're probably correct as far as that goes.
But it's bullshit.
I don't disagree with you.
And that's what I'm angry about.
Of course, I said the same thing about Hobbs and Shaw, but hey, here we are.
Did you feel like it was bullshit? They didn't tackle the problem of human enhancement?
No, I felt like it was a terribly written movie with people just pitching back and forth the worst ideas possible, and some poor guy in that writer's room going, none of this makes sense, and everyone then just throws their chair at him.
But I feel like you're missing a critical detail here. There wasn't somebody in the room going, you know what we should deal with in film in an editorialized fashion? The real problem of human enhancement.
Well, considering how much you post about the singularity...
The problem here again is this was too serious an issue to pay short shrift to in a movie where all people were coming to see was this crazy guy kill a bunch of Mexicans.
I mean, look, let's also consider, because if we're going to talk about the Rambo franchise, what it's supposed to do quite well is marry a real issue and talk about it with a degree of seriousness and nuance may be the wrong word in this respect, but a degree of some sophistication, not the most in the world, but some, and then also include murder, carnage, mayhem, and explosions.
So here's why they wrote Rambo like a shitty character as well. They established that he's taking medications. They don't really get into it because I don't think anyone writing this movie knows actually anything about post-traumatic stress disorder or
hang on.
bipolar.
In all fairness, I think I agree with you that, again, if we're going to talk about human trafficking, there's things we can do. I even think there's ways to do it without lecturing. Like, that takes a more deft hand when it comes to writing and was probably a bridge too far for the people writing this. But I think it can be done. I think if you show him dealing with the ins and outs of that, that's probably the point where you're going to start to lose people in the weeds a little bit. It's enough to show that he is on medication trying to
You don't know if the medication he's taking is for high blood pressure, diabetes, or fucking PTSD.
You know, for a guy who 20 minutes ago was whining about show don't tell.
But they could have shown him, at a local VA in Arizona talking with a psychiatrist and, why don't you, hey, why don't you tell me what's going on? Why don't you open up a little bit more? Like, nope, just give me the pill so I can go. I would have been fine with that.
Again, I think it could be done. I'm not saying it couldn't. I also just have no problem making a very safe assumption that the pills he's on are for his PTSD.
Okay, but here's the problem though. They play around, and one of the motifs of the Rambo movies has been the flashbacks that he has, which is a big time symptom of PTSD. And a big part of his character is that he has those Vietnam flashbacks. He has them in First Blood. He continues to have them in later movies.
Yes.
He has them in this one.
He has bad ones in this one. Like, the flashbacks here are to stuff from the same movie. Like, hey, remember 5 minutes ago when I said this line of dialogue?
Yeah, I would have liked to have seen him struggling with night terrors. I would, because here's the thing. There's a rich, engrossing movie here. There's a germ of an idea here that, unfortunately, instead of fleshing out the germ and really expanding upon it, like, show us the nuances of human trafficking. Show us the nuances of him dealing, of having to reintegrate into society over the last 11 years and deal with his mental illness. He does a bit of dialogue where he's like, I've just been trying to keep a lid on it. Great, thanks for telling us that. Can I see it, though? There was a germ of a movie here that they just kind of went, fuck it, first draft, let's just film that. Like, let's not belabor the pre-production process here with details. Let's just get to the murdering. So, I feel like, and here's the thing, I have nothing to say about the final action sequences or any of the action sequences for that matter. I will say this though, as Robert said, all the action sequences are fine. I've covered the shitty way they dealt with the unnervingly shitty way they dealt with human trafficking, the unnervingly shitty way they deal with mental illness in this movie. I feel like they underserved the Rambo character, especially given all that we went through in the previous 4 movies. The action sequences are, when we finally get there, are like the only saving grace of this movie. But then again, that's the only reason why anyone went to go see it. And,
well, hold on.
You know,
I wouldn't say that's the only reason people went to go see it.
Oh, really?
Hang on. Again, Rambo as a character has a history of having the ability to discuss, or at least talk a little bit about, somewhat deeper issues, and then blow up part of the world. Like,
find me the person who went to go see this because they wanted to see a movie talking about mental illness in the military. I'd like to meet that person.
Hi, Mark.
Okay, you don't count for anything.
No, you.
Okay, I don't count for anything ever.
Okay, neither of us count.
Yeah.
Okay. Look, the point that I'm trying to make here is, I'm willing to give elements of the audience a small bit of the benefit of the doubt here.
When did you fucking turn into me then?
Hang on, let me finish, please. This was very clearly a movie that was made on the assumption that they only want to see the action sequences, and it's the only part of the movie that anyone involved with the creation thereof gave any thought to.
Yeah. The last thing I'm going to talk about, and only because it was painfully stupid. So, in his youth, and by his youth I mean the second movie, he is sent into Vietnam, communist-occupied Vietnam.
Not occupied. They actually that's the legitimate government. For certain values of dictatorships being legitimate, I suppose, but...
You got a better word than occupied? Because I can't think of one.
Look, he goes into the communist country.
Okay, fine. He's dropped in the middle of communist Vietnam after he has to cut his gear away. He has one contact, but at least in preparation for it, he's got a map and he's got a plan, and even though the plan goes a little sideways, he mostly keeps to whatever strategy they had for at least getting to this camp, taking the pictures, and meeting back at the pickup zone. Rambo 3, he organizes a strategic rescue of Colonel Troutman from the Russians in Afghanistan. He has to at least somewhat come up with a plan to rescue the Christian missionaries in Burma.
Yeah, he and the mercenaries he works with come up with a fairly good plan.
Yeah. So I understand that his niece-ish fled to Mexico on a mission from God, but even so,
how dare you reference the Blues Brothers here?
But I would like to think that if my daughter went away, and when she's 17, goes away to somewhere I don't want her to go, unbeknownst to me, before I run screaming out of the driveway and in my car, I will have some plan. And I've never been in the military. What was the... It was like an utter...
You are at a loss for words. This might be a first.
When I tell you, this man, after doing... And here's an opportunity, okay? So I understand Rambo is not Batman. I understand he's not a detective. But it would have been an interesting thing for Rambo to sort of worked up to finding Gabriella. Had to interrogate people, look for clues, infiltrate and rescue. And maybe, you can still do the scene where they kick the crap out of him. Maybe he finds her and they get caught And now, then they, in the kind of a Rambo 2 kind of a thing where, he's caught and they're heroin injecting her and they're beating him and they're separating. He's got to get out of there and go get her and finally get to the truck and fuck off out of Mexico. And you can still have the same sequence of events. But maybe it isn't this stupid. But just maybe.
I mentioned this to you offline. I'm going to repeat it. I liked parts of this movie better when it was Taken.
I haven't seen Taken.
Oh, how dare you, sir?
I wanted to do it as a Long Road to Ruin, and then we stopped doing the show. That's my excuse.
Okay, I appreciate the validity of your excuse. You have no excuse now not to rectify it. See the first Taken, if nothing else. It's an exceptional action movie.
Well, had I known we were going to frequently say I liked this movie better when it was Taken, I would have made Sean do a what are we doing? An on trial for the first Taken.
There's nothing to prosecute about that movie.
Nothing to prosecute about many of the movies we do, but we find a way. God finds a way.
No, you just... you mostly, in this instance, you mostly mean one of us has to BS through our teeth.
Well, that's kind of on trial for you. All right. I think I have covered the relevant points here of why this movie was unbearably frustrating. I mean, it's a good murder porn. Once you finally get to, but it's kind of, but it's like murder porn, but made like in the 70s, where it takes forever to get to the sex. Like, come on, like speed up already.
You would be more familiar with.
I've watched a lot of porn for many decades.
That explains so much about your Twitter feed, actually.
It really should. All right. You want to close this out here, or are we talking about the money?
I get this movie was, whereas most of the other Rambo movies take real issues and then attempt to marry action with again, we're not talking, the most sophisticated discussion here, but you do get a bit of nuance and you get a bit of real issues that are discussed with a degree of intelligence.
They are?
A degree, for God's sake. I'm qualifying this appropriately, okay? Okay, not 3. Right, 3 doesn't count.
Oh, I thought you meant this movie.
No, the franchise.
Sorry, I take it back. You're fine.
Okay. And then again, you just have action rampages, things blow up, people are less people. A lot of people die. A lot are horribly maimed. It's a thing. And for some reason, when it came to this movie, they left out entirely the first part and just went, okay. Now, and sadly, when I say left out the first part, I don't mean decided, you know what we're going to do? It's an 80-minute action movie. And we're just going to enter on action, and it's going to be nothing but battle and explosions and bloodshed for the entire runtime of the movie. So they kept all of the time that they should be dedicating to an actual subject in, but didn't actually do anything with it, and then got to the killing. And again, when he gets to the action, when the movie does, that's the only saving grace it has. And it's all well done. But it's sadly about 15 minutes of an 89-minute movie, which manages to feel even longer than that. And 89 minutes is nothing. There
are children's movies that are more than that.
Yeah. All of which your son has walked out of because he has even less of an attention span.
You shut your fat face.
Tell me I'm wrong.
He has not walked out of any movies. He cannot drive.
You know what I mean. Okay, fine. He has switched them off on whatever device he's watching them on, or decided in the middle of viewing something to go do something else if he's at home.
Nobody listening wants us to keep having this argument. Please proceed.
I'm not sure that's true, but I will defer to you in this instance. Yeah, that's it for me. It's just not a very well put together movie. When it actually gets going, it's perfect. It's perfectly acceptable, but there's not enough stuff to it's not. The stuff that's acceptable is not exceptional enough to make you really okay with dealing with all the crap.
I feel like the new version of Death Wish was better.
I'm not not quite prepared to go that far. Unless by new version of Death Wish you mean Death Sentence with Kevin Bacon, in which case, yes.
And on that note,
if you mean Death Wish with Bruce Willis,
I do.
Then again, I'm not quite going to make that leap with you. I'm not sure it was.
I'd have to rewatch it. But in the meantime, in between
But
time,
why would I do that?
Yeah.
Here comes the money.
Here we go. Money talk.
Here comes the money. Money, money, money.
Dollar, dollar. Dollar, dollar.
All right. On a budget of $50 million, at the time of this recording, such as it is, its current box office stands at $28.2 million. By the time it's done, I'm sure it'll make over $50 million. Good for Lionsgate. I'm wondering if this is...
Hang on, it's got to make $100 million.
It's got to make $100 million. It probably gets to $100 million at some point by the end of its total theatrical run.
Yeah, it lips across that line, I imagine.
I mean, this weekend, the only thing that it's got to deal with is Abominable, which no one who saw this movie is going to go see that. And
well, this even came in second on the weekend to the Downton Abbey movie.
I almost texted you and be like, how fast can you go see Downton Abbey? Because we should talk about this and Rambo.
I would not have seen it.
Why? No,
I'm not saying it's bad. I have no context for it. I know it's a TV show. That's all I know.
Well, here's the thing, and here's why I've said it would have been a funny thing to review, to compare and contrast Rambo to Downton Abbey, other than they are diametrically the opposite of each other.
They could not be more different. The only thing that these movies have in common is that they're primarily English language.
So I took my wife to go see Downton Abbey for her birthday. She's a big fan of the show. This is like her Star Wars, her WrestleMania. This is like the thing she's been looking forward to all year. It's like the one thing she had on the calendar.
The King and Queen are coming to Downton. Oh,
that's the movie. I mean, there's more to it than that.
Look, it's a pure drama. There's characters, I'm sure. There's all the interactions. Here's
the thing.
Whatever.
Here's the thing. I get a lot of crap, and rightly so. Part of it is... Yeah, part of it's me playing it up. Part of it is true, genuine interest in things that go boom. But contrary to the accepted notions about me, I do enjoy a good, subtle drama. I just don't do them on this show, and I tend to not talk about them. They're kind of like my own little private Idaho. And
have you ever been to Idaho?
I have not. I know that's a thing, though. My own private Idaho. Anyway, the point is, I actually really enjoyed Downton Abbey. Like, not just because I'm like my wife's husband and I have to, because like that's what you do in a marriage. I genuinely enjoyed the movie. I haven't seen anything this subtle. Granted, we watched it like Hobbs and Shaw, so what is subtle? But like true,
the opposite of Hobbs and Shaw.
I haven't seen a movie this subtle with, this level of acting and, when the high drama is the king and queen servants demanding that they serve their king and queen, and the conflict that arises with the Downton Abbey staff. They're like, you're in our home, so we should serve, and what an honor it is to serve the king and queen. That's the conflict of this movie. I mean,
the conflict is which group of us will get to serve the king and queen and the distinguished guests that have graced us with their presence.
Yeah.
I enjoy a good subtle show, but man, I might have pulled my eyes out trying to get through that.
And that's why I wanted you to see this. Like, I think like
you just hate me that much. In the same week, you will put me through a terrible action movie, such as it is, and a well-made drama that I have no ability to engage with whatsoever.
Yeah, I really wanted to do both.
I hate you so much. You are the worst.
I really am, but I couldn't get it together enough, and I know that your time is limited in some cases, so I was like, I'll just leave it alone. But boy, if we could have done a Rambo versus Downton Abbey show, I might have just been done for the year. Like, it's not getting any better than that. Anyway, back to Rambo. It did not win the weekend. Obviously, Downton Abbey did. So what I was getting to was there's like a Judy Garland biopic. Damn it!
Really?
Well, if I don't,
I'm surprised it exists. That's what I mean.
oh, okay. I was like,
I'm
really?
Not your pronunciation. Like, I'm really surprised that's a thing.
Yeah, and I want to go see it. It stars Renee Zellweger. She's apparently still around.
Oh, God. How is she going to play Judy Garland? Judy Garland was dead before Renee Zellweger's as old as she is right now.
Well, I mean, this is
Like,
late.
there's no way.
This is later years Judy Garland. This is like after lots of alcohol and bulimia. So yeah, I'm really.
No. Like, Renee Zellweger is just no.
So anyway, no one going to see Judy Garland is going to see this movie. No one going to see Abominable is going to see this thing.
Hopefully, no one sees Abominable to begin with.
I think my kids are going to go. I'm not going with them. I'm also not going to take them to see The Addams Family, but that's a whole other podcast. In any case. So, but the following week is Joker, and then we kind of dive headfirst into the October movies, and there's some fairly there's some pretty good competition, pretty stiff competition for this sort of thing. You've got Zombieland 2 Double Tap, you've got Maleficent, you've got Joker. There's a lot going on in the month of October to where I don't think Rambo's going to get lost in the shuffle. So it probably ekes itself out to 100 million, but I think that's more hope than actually going to happen.
Yeah, again, if it gets to that finish line, it's limping.
Yeah, it's stripping. As for, like I said, the weekend, darn it. There we go. All right, Downton Abbey debuted at number 1, Ad Astra number 2. I'm sorry, David Wright, I did not want to go see Ad Astra. He asked if we were going to cover it. I would have covered Hustlers before Ad Astra.
I would absolutely have flown to Florida to kick you in the crotch for that.
You don't want to see Jennifer Lopez play a stripper?
I don't want to see Jennifer Lopez at all.
Whatever. I'm all about you.
I mean, look, Ad Astra is just, Apocalypse Now in space, basically.
Downton Abbey debuted at number 1, Ad Astra number 2, Rambo at number 3. It fell from 1 to 4, Hustlers 2 to 5, Lion King is still going strong from 5 to 6, Good Boys 4 to 7.
I hate everyone seeing that movie, by the way, at this point.
Angel Has Fallen 3 to 8, Overcomer 7 to 9, Hobbs and Shaw 6 to 10. Hot damn. Indiana Jones and the Lost City of Gold 10 to 11.
That's Dora, not Indiana Jones. That's a terrible comparison, and shame on you for making it.
Says you.
Says everyone.
The Peanut Butter Falcon fell from 9 to 12. Brittany Runs a Marathon stayed at number 13 for the second week in a row. Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark, which is doing very well on downloads, by the way, fell from 11 to 14. The Goldfinch.
Hobbs and Shaw barely crossed the $750 million. How can that movie have made $750 million and still not be profitable? The answer, blown up budget.
So it just opened in like 341 theaters.
It already had its big China opening, I think, last week.
You know what just also opened in 275 theaters? Hustlers.
Yeah, but who cares?
Me. I think we should cover more stuff about strippers.
Mark, if you want to see naked women, you have the internet, you have strip clubs around you. Do not foist that on me.
Okay, Lionsgate also put out John Wick, which was profitable, so yeah, Rambo doesn't matter. Boy, look at this list from Lionsgate for this year.
Not good.
John Wick, Tyler Perry's A Medea Family Funeral, Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark, Angel Has Fallen, 5 Feet Apart, Cold Pursuit, Long Shot, Hellboy, which, boy, did that blow up on the launch pad.
Oh, God.
Rambo, and then a bunch of other crap.
Yeah, it's been not the best year. Again, John Wick was fine. Scary Stories will wind up being fine. Again, there's several that'll be just fine, but they're not. This is not a banner year for them.
No. All right. So as we said, coming up in the month of coming up this Friday, the big mass market release is Abominable. Like I said,
which you should not see.
There's a bunch of other movies out, but they're all like small showings. Judy is one of them, the Judy Garland movie. I just happened to notice it because I'm a big Judy Garland fan. There's a Fathom event for the 25th. It's Errol Spence versus Sean Porter. Oh, sorry, that's on Saturday. Duh. So yeah, October 4th is Joker. The 11th is The Addams Family, Gemini Man, High Strung Free Dance, and Jexy. So the big two there will be Gemini Man and The Addams Family. The 16th through the 18th, you've got Jay and Silent Bob Reboot.
Ooh.
Maleficent, Mistress of Evil, and Zombieland 2. And then on the 25th, you have Black and Blue, which is the movie about the black police officer who gets...
Can I say I've seen like the same trailer for that ahead of 4 different movies, and I've wanted to throw something each time.
Countdown, it's the horror/thriller. The Current War, and The Last Full Measure. And that's that for the month of October. So, like I said, the big ones are all pretty stiff competition for Rambo. I think by the end of October, no one's seeing that movie anymore.
Nah, it's done by then.
So, all right. That brings us to the final part of our podcast here. Not a whole lot to talk about with regards to the money, so here we go with the Rotten Tomato reviews.
But I just gotta know one thing. Are you ready? No! I said, are you ready?
No, God! No, God, please, no! 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 No!
Okie dokie. So many to pick from.
I imagine you just you looked up, I wonder which ones I wonder how many of these I will have to choose from, and what will my process be, and then you just like buried in an avalanche of options.
Here's a good one for you. Calu Pettis of Battle Royale with Cheese.
Oh, hold on. Spell the first name, please.
Caillou. Caillou.
That's what I was waiting for. I knew you'd get there.
Caillou Pettis of Battle Royale with Cheese. You got nothing on Battle Royale with Cheese, huh?
I mean, what's there to say about that kind of title?
Rambo Last Blood is disappointingly bland and lifeless, with an incredibly predictable story, cliche villains, and its action scenes are few and far between.
The movie was almost as bland as your review.
Let's see. Jackie K. Cooper of JackieCooper.com.
Self-employed loser.
Thank you. Coming off the success of his Rocky reboots, this is a big step downward. The movie has to pile on the gore just as hard to justify the horrific revenge. Doesn't work, but you won't be bored.
Hold on. What do you mean the movie has to pile on gore to justify the... No, you have to do something horrible to justify... You have, reversed cause and effect there.
Shay Serrano of The Ringer. I didn't like it.
Oh,
because
The Ringer.
Oh my god, this is written like one of my kids' talks. I just didn't like it because it wasn't fun. To illustrate this particular... He actually put comma. To illustrate this particular point, Assassins, which had a Latino bad guy, or period, or clever, parentheses, like Demolition Man, comma, which had a black bad guy, period, or sexually interesting, parentheses, like The Specialist, period.
Wow. Who wrote that? Okay, I know what this is. You lazy bastard. You didn't even write that, did you? You used some, talking, speech to text thing. That's what you did. You couldn't even be bothered, and if this guy, just has no hands, I'm going to feel like a jackass. But that reads like I didn't actually type anything out. I just spoke into a microphone, and this is a rough approximation of what came out. That's terrible.
Susan Granger of SSG Syndicate. Mercifully, it only runs 89 minutes.
Oh, she's terrible.
Let's see. Some of these I actually really agree with. Tim Hayes, Sight and Sound. Last Blood is a swing into straight exploitation movie territory. From its one-act structure to its urban slaughter with blades and hammers to its scuzzy sex trafficking scenario, plus some wildly homoerotic wounding.
I'm sorry,
fuck?
what?
This movie's a lot, but I didn't get homoerotic out of any of it.
Like, even the wounding, like, how... Okay, he hits the one guy in the crotch with a hammer. That's just effective.
Not only that, he's in a brothel where dicks are out.
Yeah, like, it's thematically appropriate. Like, oh, you're in here with an underage girl who's here against her will. You know what? I'm going to hit you in the crotch.
Yeah, right, hitting the dick. That seems appropriate.
Yeah. Like, how do you get... Oh, you don't understand. Their faces were marked. How is that homoerotic?
I don't know, but I'm not going to kink shame.
I will.
No, you're the one that always says I don't want to kink shame. Don't start now.
I mean, look, I say it, but I don't mean it.
Matthew Turner, The List. The horrific
The List.
The horrific finale makes Rambo himself seem like the real monster.
Shut up!
Making you briefly wonder if Stallone is aware of the irony. On balance, one suspects not.
Shut up. Oh, God, no. All these... You know what? Brief tangent, okay?
Oh, here we go.
I'll be brief. The death of photojournalism has been a real detriment to society as a whole. And I don't mean that we have other I don't mean, we've lost photojournalism as far as, well, film that is developed via chemicals is now essentially obsolete. I mean, a bunch of you lazy jackasses who choose not to show pictures of the atrocities committed by the Mexican drug cartels. You have no idea the horrible, horrible things that these people do. Look, I know that it was a somewhat badly worded comment when Trump just called when Trump mentioned that they're animals. The people who do what those people do, yeah, you know what? I'm going with subhuman. Doing what they do to other human beings, I don't have a better word for it. Or if I do, I'm going to choose not to use it out of respect for other people listening and the fact that maybe you guys, don't want me to go into profanity-laden tirades.
What a concrete world we're living in where we're such... I don't know what the right phrase is. You're better at this than I am. But this idea of, perfectly well when Trump said they don't send their best over here, they're rapists and murderers. He's clearly talking about the criminal element that comes over the border. He wasn't addressing, like, the typical, Mexican family who's just trying to... Who's trying to participate in the American experience. He clearly wasn't addressing them.
He's literally discussing, like, the question, I believe wasn't that whole summit, like, him talking with a bunch of law enforcement officers?
Right.
And some of them complaining about the stupidity of sanctuary cities.
Yeah.
And he's like, yeah, no, I know how terrible it is. I know that these are terrible, terrible people.
It was a line utterly taken out of context and then made to reflect his supposed opinion of all Mexicans. And it's like, look, I'm not saying the guy's not a racist. I'm saying in that particular moment he was not saying all Mexicans are rapists. But that's been the headline because we're a concrete group of idiots.
I mean, look, I'm a fairly concrete individual. You've said so. Even I can appreciate context. I don't know, like, have we all decided that we're going to self-diagnose various levels of autism and are now just engaged in method acting?
All right,
what's going on? Anyway,
that's
point,
genuinely funny, by the way.
Thank you. I get one every now and then. The point being, these are not good people. You'd think that that as many people, especially given the tenor of this review, given as much white guilt as this guy's carrying around, you'd think he'd understand that people who engage in slavery, which is what human trafficking is, are not really under these circumstances to be empathized with.
Yeah.
They're terrible people, and in this instance, Rambo does terrible things to them. there is no irony here apart from that which you try to impose on it. They're bad people who end up badly.
That's the thing. Like, this movie gets criticized for being xenophobic, to which, again, I said this at the top of the review. You're gonna have to choose which hill you're dying on. You can't do both. They're diametrically opposed. If you're creating a villain character, the villain has to be bad, probably irredeemable, which means they're gonna be bad things, maybe given over to stereotypes of whatever race they happen to be. You either want to be inclusive and give jobs to everybody, in which case some of these villains are going to be minorities, or you're going to be exclusive and none of the minorities get jobs and will only put white people in film. I don't know how else to talk about this, but it's like
there's not another way to talk about it apart from people who just want every hero to be Black Panther or Captain Marvel.
I guess that's the thing. It's like, I guess this would have not offended people had one of two things happened. One, Rambo's fighting a bunch of like white terrorists, like it's like neo-Nazis or something, or had they either gender or race swapped Rambo, and again the villains were all white. I guess that's the only way this is acceptable. Welcome to the world in 2019. Which brings me to Michael Joseph Garza, Cultured Vultures.
Oh.
You almost cursed. That's funny.
I almost did. Oh, God.
One day you're going to do it, and I will have to end the Radulich Broadcasting Network having achieved the ultimate success.
Your goal is to make me... I mean, look, I didn't swear. I swore a little bit earlier on this episode. I try not to. It's something I'm really working on. But you're trying to get me to drop an F-bomb or something.
Yep. But not because of me necessarily poking you, but because of what I'm trying to make it so that there's a great big pile of poop that I have found, and I've dropped it at your doorstep, and I want you to step in it. That's the only way it'll be meaningful.
Fair enough.
A film that should have passed the Rambo series torch, like Rocky did to Creed, ends mired in redundancy. So what this person wanted was for Rambo to have been kidnapped by sex traffickers. Because who doesn't want to get into old man ass? I mean, really. And have him be saved by Gabriella.
This is the same jackass who's like, boy, Peppermint sure was a good film experience, despite the fact that he never actually saw it and neither did anyone else.
Nate Adams.
We need a female Punisher. Do we really? Like, I'm not opposed to female protagonists. I'm not opposed to female superheroes. I make fun of Captain Marvel because it's a terrible movie.
I am. They don't sell tickets. Peppermint, anything involving Scarlett Johansson outside of Black Widow. They've tried. This keeps failing. Nobody wants this. Get the fuck over it.
Thank you. Look, you can... and look, again, let's be clear. Mark's not talking artistically. He's purely talking commercially.
They keep trying. I can pull up a list of all, like... for the last 5 years, all the female-fronted action movies, and unless there was Marvel in the title, none of these were successful.
Yeah,
none.
Wonder Woman did all right.
If it wasn't a fucking comic book.
Okay.
You're
probably correct. They tried it with Zoe Saldana, and what was that, like Soledad, something like that?
Yeah.
Look, they keep trying. It largely keeps failing. And in some cases, it's because the movies themselves are just unbelievably poor.
No, I don't even think that's the problem, because there's plenty of poor action movies that do just fine. But, again, the action genre...
That's just Captain Marvel. Terrible movie.
The action genre is largely a magnet for male audiences. Male audiences tend not to want to see females in lead action roles. They're fine with them as damsels in distress. They're fine with them as co-stars in many cases. Like
you can have badass women.
A badass girl running alongside James Bond is just fine. Once James Bond leaves the screen, no one's interested in that woman anymore.
That is largely true.
Tori Preston of Pajiba. The only positive thing I can say is that the title promises this will be the last Rambo movie, and that, at the very least, is a good thing. Ugh.
Again, if you can't muster up the intellectual honesty or integrity to say that the action scenes in this movie are well shot and readable, you're a hack.
Oh, here we go. Here's one for you.
Oh no.
Charles Barfield of The Playlist.
Something you're not on, Mr. Barfield.
Jingoism is expected, but Last Blood takes extreme patriotism and adds a vulgar 2019 MAGA design flair to it.
Wow.
I hope you get invited to all the parties, you sellout fuck.
Like, that's not even accurate. Here's the thing about this. I would have been more okay with this if Rambo actually did have a MAGA hat.
Yeah, we were talking about that offline, where it's like, we wish he'd killed all the Mexicans in a MAGA hat.
I might have been more engaged with that. Like,
set to a soundtrack of Bruce Springsteen playing Born in the USA.
I mean, Bruce Springsteen, I'm utterly...
It would have been funny.
I'll take your word for it.
What, are you going to play Kurt Angle's theme in that scene? Come on.
No, you can't do Angle's theme, but I'll think about it and come up with a better answer than anything by Bruce Springsteen. Because,
all right, so
Anyway.
I gotta read you the outre.
Hang on, before we get to that. Look, again, a significant part of the story of Rambo actually does revolve around his patriotism and his relationship with the country and the people, and that's an integral part of the character.
Look, this was a very personal story. This had no greater socio-political story to tell. This isn't, I'm going after the Mexicans because Mexicans are bad people. They could have been fucking Eskimos. He's
not even going after he doesn't even make a point that, like, I've been tracking or watching the news about how bad things are in Mexico. No, it's just, look, I know bad things happen down there. I know bad things happen in various places, but, border cities on the Mexican side of the border, I'm not trying to, piss anyone off here, but you can look at the statistics and make your own judgment call there, guys.
Look, blonde white girls get kidnapped in Caribbean islands. Shit happens everywhere.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not a MAGA... First of all, it's not a MAGA thing when the story you're telling is my niece was kidnapped by criminals. Like...
the only political language in this movie is stuff people are using to talk about it.
Well, again, it's not like Rambo never calls them like wetbacks or anything. There's no slurs.
He doesn't say anything bad about the country, or again, he doesn't like these people because these people did terrible things to people he cared about. Like, right. It's a fundamentally racist thing. If it's because of something racial. These are people that, like, what if they were, again, not to belabor the point, but what if it was white nationalists? No one likes white nationalists. No one would be complaining about it.
Okay, not for nothing, but Snowfall is a highly regarded series that just got picked up for another season on FX. Nobody in that show is presented well. Not the Mexicans, not the blacks, and certainly not the CIA. But no one's raising a fucking hair about that, about how not a single decent Mexican in the show.
Well, that's because you understand there's not a white guy in there that's the hero.
Yeah, that's for certain. Right. Ed Whitfield of the
I hate our stupid society so much.
It's pretty dumb. As though it were playing in John Rambo's mind, it's quick populated by fleeting images of death and destruction, senseless, dehumanizing, nihilistic, humorless, cruel, and psychologically taxing.
Okay.
All right.
Hang on.
Pansy. All right, Pansy.
Okay, A, yes, you're a giant weenie. B, if I were the type that's inclined to take offense, or to see, or to, ascribe to you motivations or your intentions. Boy, did you just insult everyone with PTSD, didn't you?
Yeah.
Like that, look, again, I am not inclined to take offense at pretty much anything, and I am not offended by this. But given that one of the defining characteristics of John Rambo is his PTSD, you just managed to say, hey, everyone's suffering from this. F you. So you know what? Good job, jackass.
Speaking of which, Grant Watson, a fiction machine. It is blandly offensive, out of date, and ultimately quite dull. It's just there to be ignored.
Okay, in all seriousness, anyone offended by this? Anyone offended by this movie? Apart from these, like, soapbox virtue signaling jackasses? Okay, look, if you're listening to this, and bear in mind, if you're listening to our network, you're not the kind that's inclined to take offense easily. Okay, I know this.
Or you are, and are just waiting to see what offensive shit we say next, and don't worry, it's coming.
Either way, we thank you for listening.
Please leave us a 1-star review on iTunes and tell us what fuckfaces we are.
I'd like you to if you were genuinely offended by something in this movie, please tell Mark. And again, I'm not saying bombard Mark with hate. I'm genuinely curious. I would like a little market research if you're all interested in participating.
All right, Matthew Rosa of Salon.com, top critic.
Oh, God, what a giant waste of space is Salon.
And dear sir, in my mind I had something more crude to say to you. I'm just going to say this. After having read your review, which I will do now, I hope it's worth all the party invites. May you be invited to every liberal gathering west of the Rocky Mountains. I hope in your soul you are contented with that, because it's what you deserve. It is less an escapist action movie and more a dramatized manifestation of the most notorious sentences from Donald Trump's presidential campaign announcement speech. Dear Hollywood, he's going to get reelected. Start getting over it now.
They won't. Okay, look, let's be clear. Again, Trump's got a decent enough chance at winning re-election, especially considering... I don't know if you've been tracking any of this, Mark, but the Democratic primary debates, they've been good for, like, the far left of the Democratic Party, but anyone even close to the middle is looking at these guys and kind of going, I'm not okay with open borders. I'm not okay with abortion up until literal point of birth. And, I'm not really all that thrilled about your plan to put the healthcare industry out of business and all the catastrophic ripple effects that will come about from that. Like, this is the most bizarre thing in the world. They're all trying to basically just stand up there and quote Marx or Che, and every rational person in the country is looking at them and Trump and going, dear God, why?
Yeah, but it's okay. But anyone that actually, all right, I'm going to say something. It's going to be dumb, and you should mock me accordingly. Anyone paying attention to the history of political races knows that these people run to the far of their party, and then when they're the nominee, they moderate up to the point of election, and then in office they moderate even further, or they'll get nothing done.
Well, hang on. Here's my thing about this.
I mean, they're not wrong.
No, you're not wrong. You go a little bit to the extreme during the primary, you try to moderate during the general, and then you get into office and we see what happens, if anything. And in other years, I think it would be less of an issue. But here's the thing about this, and I mean that specifically for this year in particular, because 2016, you had the Democratic primary, you had the Republican primary, you had Bernie being Bernie and Hillary being Hillary, going, I've already bought off everyone or murdered everyone I need to. One old coot from Vermont's not going to stop me from getting the nomination.
And I'd like to say at this time, Hillary Clinton is a murderer.
Yes. Husband's a rapist, she's a murderer, we all know. For some reason, we all go along with it, but we all know.
Well, we look at we do enjoy our celebrities.
I hate celebrity culture, but you are correct. But no one was really paying attention to the primaries outside of the either political punditry or members of the party. That's not really the case here, because we all know Trump's going to run again. So everyone in the freaking country is watching the Democratic primary debates. if all you're worried about is dealing within your base, then sure, who cares? Say whatever you have to say. But when you're trying to appeal to a lot of the middle, and a lot of the middle is watching you guys go insane, that's a problem.
Okay. It's been an interesting podcast.
Well, again, thank you to all the reviewers here who couldn't actually talk about the movie.
Corey Coleman of Double Toasted. This is not Rambo. They've exhausted Rambo.
That's your review? Like, that's the clip.
Oh, wait,
That's
this is better. James Berardinelli, Real Reviews, top critic. An unwatchable piece of excrement.
That's not accurate.
Kevin Fallon of The Daily Beast. Even more than its star-tortured He-Man routine and grisly action, it's the film's ghastly worldview. For fuck's sake.
Oh.
It's the film's ghastly worldview that's truly archaic and in need of retirement. You're absolutely right.
You know what? We really should make more of an effort to be inclusive and portray human traffickers as genuine, good-hearted people.
What human trafficking? Don't acknowledge that it exists.
Really, at this point, is it not cultural appropriation to refer to it as human trafficking? Shouldn't we just let the people who engage in slave trade like this just do it because it's who they are?
What slavery? There's no slavery. Look, these women offer themselves freely into the arms, the caring arms of these men who want nothing more than to protect them from the rest of the world. I mean, really, who doesn't want to drown in heroin and not have to think about things?
I'd love to say make a demonetized joke, but...
Jesus Christ. Ghastly worldview. Yes, I'm sorry this offended your tender sensibility, sir, but human trafficking is in fact a thing.
And guess what? Again, it's everywhere. If Rambo had retired to Montana instead of Arizona, there are human traffickers in Canada. It's a thing. I know we all like to pretend Canada's some great paradise, but a bunch of morons elected Justin Trudeau. Like, no, bad stuff happens there too.
Fumiani S. Langa of City Press, South Africa. This is the worst film I've seen this year. Oh sir. Oh, sir.
Bull!
Speaking of trafficking, we traffic in bad films. This was not the worst.
Allow me, madam, to present the following bits of evidence. The Lego Movie 2. What Men Want.
The Kitchen.
Alita, Battle Angel.
The Kitchen.
Tyler Perry's A Medea Family Funeral.
The Kitchen.
The Kitchen.
Hey, look, let's just limit this to stuff we've done. So let's go all the way back to January here.
Dumbo.
Oh, that was terrible.
Pet Sematary was really not good. Hellboy. We almost did Hellboy, but didn't. I apologize. Although I would absolutely include that.
We did review Hellboy. It was terrible.
I didn't see Hellboy.
Maybe I did it with somebody else then.
Huh. I will take your... Again, Hellboy. That was terrible. We didn't see that, so I'll...
You hated Fighting with My Family.
Oh, in many ways, yes. Detective Pikachu. Boy, was that... I mean, look. That was terrible.
And yes, we did Hellboy on April 16th.
I didn't. I don't know what was up with that. I couldn't see it. That was it. I ran out of the ability to see the movie.
All right. I must have done it with somebody else then.
Okay.
Aladdin.
Dark Phoenix.
Oh. Men in Black International.
Oh, that was bad. No, we didn't do Annabelle.
Crawl.
Crawl wasn't as bad as this. Oh, The Lion King was pretty bad. Like, it just has no reason to exist. Hobbs and Shaw's a pretty bad movie. If you're so inclined, there's The Kitchen, which, boy, Mark saw, and Mark talked about.
Yep. So, yeah. Hyperbole, thy name is whatever this fucknut's name is.
Yeah, like, again, is this a good movie? No.
No.
Is this worse than Dark Phoenix? I don't think so.
No. Look, okay, so Dark Phoenix is a poorly made movie. This was a competently made murder porn.
It's competently shot. I take issue with, because the writing is part of the making, but this is a better shot movie than Dark Phoenix by a significant margin. Let's have a shootout on the top of a train at night.
Hey, not a single performance is worse than the gal in Dumbo.
Oh God, she's so bad.
Yeah, she was easily the worst performer of any movie I've seen this year. Joshua,
I'm certain there was someone standing behind, out of camera shot, but within her eyesight, that had giant cue cards with her lines on them.
Joshua Rothkopf of Time Out, top critic. Stallone may not be the best custodian of his own legacy. Graying, splotchy, and barely intelligible. Well, that's not new. He turns in a self...
Really?
He turns... Have you not seen it? All right. He turns in a self-negating performance just as ugly on the inside. No, that's not nice.
It's not accurate either. Look, first of all...
Wait. I'm gonna read these last two and then we're done here.
Okay.
Hope Madden of Columbus Underground. Rambo Last Blood is basically Taken meets Home Alone, only racist.
It's not racist. Oh, I am so sick of that. I mean this in all seriousness. There's always going to be these bunch of morons who, in an effort to drive traffic for their crappy reviews, will accuse anything that features a racially diverse hero and villain as being racist. It's ridiculous.
All right. So let's end with your dad. Roger Moore of Movie Nation.
Oh, God.
A fascist snuff film. Well, that's not...
shut up!
Nobody actually died, sir. That's not a snuff film by definition.
Okay, yeah. Definitionally, you're incorrect. Secondly, how in the blue hell do you get to fascist out of this movie? There is no political ideology present. None! Bad things happen to this guy's family. He exacts bloody revenge. That's the story. Oh, but why were the villains Mexican then? Because there's a lot of bad Mexican cartel members on the other side of the Mexican border, and the movie's set in Arizona. Again, you set this movie in a different geographic location, and you get a different villain doing the same things. It's racist if you go out of your way to play on stereotypes and negatively portray a race of people. Here, it's purely a function of geography. That's not racist, you moron.
So, new rules, Hollywood. No minority villains. Only minority heroes. Got it? We can't take it. We're too sensitive. We just... I hope for those of you actors who are wanting to stretch and really take on some juicy performances, sorry, you're 10 years too late. No more villain roles for you. We're done here. Good luck waiting in line for those rare hero parts to come your way. But hey, look, they'll put anybody in a romantic comedy, so that's good, right? All right.
Yeah, but how many people? I mean this in all seriousness. What was the last decent romantic comedy?
I don't know. I don't watch that shit.
Thank you. No one does.
Oh no, those things make money. I mean, they're shot
No,
for
they
like a dollar.
don't.
No, they are. They are shot for $1.50. They make money.
Okay, but again, let's take out good. When was the last one that was released?
Jesus fucking Christ.
And I mean wide release. We're excluding direct streaming stuff.
All right, hang on.
So I'll scroll backwards from where we are right now for romantic comedy, because there was a Netflix one recently, but we're just counting that.
Oh God, if we start getting into TV, this is going to change the tenor of this conversation.
No. Again, movies, wide release. Well, okay, released. We don't need full wide release, but a theatrical film.
All right, I have
What
the
was
Wikipedia
the last?
up.
That's what I'm scrolling up through. I'm looking for romantic comedy. Okay, we need to get all the way to June, and I'm not sure how accurate this is, for Yesterday, your crappy fan fiction about the Beatles.
Oh, I enjoyed that movie.
Yeah, of course you did.
My wife and I saw that together.
Okay, go back a little bit further in June, and you get to +1, which no one saw.
I don't even know what that is.
Neither do I. I know what it's listed as. I know what it's listing. I know what its categorization is. Going further back.
Wow, you're not kidding. I'm just looking in the column that says what the genre is.
Ditto. And again, I'm excluding Netflix. Because there have been
5 Feet Apart.
Maybe.
It's a romance teen drama. It was shot for $7
Hold
million
on,
and it made $88 million.
Hang on. We said comedy.
Oh, okay. Romantic comedy. Got it.
Romantic comedy. All right, we were very specific here. I'm still going.
How about just comedy?
No.
No? Okay. Has to be romantic comedy?
Look, there's plenty of comedies that get released.
Yeah, and they're all shot for $1.50.
I mean, if you... Okay, we have to go all the way back to February, then, for the next one. For Isn't It Romantic?
Comedy drama? No?
Nope. Romantic comedy.
God damn. Always Be My Maybe. Oh, that's Netflix.
I scrolled past it already, Mark.
Oh, I started at January.
I started at the bottom and went up.
Okie doke. Then you're not going to find anything else.
Yeah. So, what were you saying about people seeing them?
Well, they got to get made to be seen. Hey, you know what, though? I'm being very harsh to minorities looking for juicy villain parts. You'll always have work on television. No one seems to care about that.
Yeah, that's kind of the real bear of that, isn't it?
I hope you enjoy working in television. It's certainly a more sophisticated medium than feature films.
At this point, it is. And looking at the critical response to a bunch of this crap, I can't imagine. I wonder why.
So you're welcome for dear old Uncle Mark giving you acting and film advice.
I am genuinely shocked. And you know what? I think the reason no one complained about this in Hobbs and Shaw is that Idris Elba's British. Otherwise, they would have been all over the fact that Jason Statham tried to kill him.
Well, okay. The other side of that,
succeeded.
though, is he's a very cool villain. He's not evoking any stereotypes other than supervillain stereotype.
He actually does say, "I'm Black Superman."
He really does, and it's awesome.
Actually, a line of dialogue, but boy, that's not racist.
No, of course not.
And of course, it's not. That's the point.
All right. Tomorrow on the Metal Hammer of Doom,
I hate our stupid culture.
We'll be reviewing Korn the Nothing. Robin and I are back. If you've enjoyed this, Robin and I are back for part 2 of Disenchantment on TV Party Tonight. I think
that'll be a fun discussion.
I will be a guest on Biodocs this Friday night. You can look for that to be released on the Biodocs podcast at some point in the near future. According to the Polynix guy, my episode of Polynix will be dropping this Thursday. So if you are into podcasters talking politics, the kind of sitting around a table, shooting the breeze type of political talk, check out the Polynix podcast. Victor Ciccato, also a member of the Radulich Broadcasting Network family. We bring him on to do some boxing. He hosts his own All About Life with VIC podcast. He was on there. A bunch of other podcasters have been on there. So check out Polynix. You should try to jump on. I think you would enjoy the conversation with this guy. Very, very free flowing. No real agenda.
If he's that hard up for guests, I can look. My schedule's largely free, so.
Well, yeah, go say, hey, I record with Mark. He needs guests, so go check him out. I'm trying to get my wife on there to talk about the education system, seeing as she's an expert in the subject. But anyway, next week, Onslaught Month has ended. All 4 episodes of Onslaught
Thankfully.
are now up on the Radulich Broadcasting Network via the Source Material podcast. Next week, we start Gotham by Gaslight, the book,
Okay,
then
hang
the
on.
movie.
In all seriousness, you said that you enjoyed Onslaught?
Enjoy elements of Onslaught.
Okay.
I
So you enjoy Franklin Richards all by his lonesome, sitting, hugging his knees next to
Did
the...
you not hear that podcast where I broke down and cried and talked about my wife losing a baby?
Which one?
Which baby?
Which podcast you broke down crying talking about your wife's miscarriage? Because you've done that more than once.
This is true.
You're gonna have to be more...
Onslaught Part 4.
Okay. That's why I never get invited to anything.
This is why we don't invite Rob Winfree to any parties.
I wouldn't go anyway.
Anyway, Gotham by Gaslight, the book, then the movie. We've got a Hell Yeah review coming up next Wednesday. And then on Thursday, myself, Pat Mullen, and Jesse Starcher will be talking about BH 90210. There'll be a rebroadcast of the source material covering The Killing Joke just in time for the new Joker movie.
Hang on. I got to talk about that real fast.
Oh, for fuck's sake.
Real fast. Not going in depth. I'm asking you to me. We don't care about anything here. Well, we care about very little. How's your level of interest in that movie now relative to, the first trailer? Well, not the first announcement, but the first trailer.
See, it's not the trailers that have me interested in the movie. It's that it got an 8-minute standing ovation at one of the film festivals.
Oh, hold on. I don't care about that.
Well, no. These are things that I'm interested in. This is context. This is social context surrounding the movie. So, okay. I don't. You get worked up about trailers. I tend not to.
Okay. Well, again, I use that only as a point of reference.
So, I am interested in any movie that deals with the social climate and its impact on one's mental health. Actually, it's funny you mention it because I talked about this on Pollinix where, we were talking about guns and mental health, and I said, any one of us, they talk about, we shouldn't let people with mental health issues own guns. Really? Because sometimes you don't know you have a mental health issue until you've had one bad day.
Can we also, and I mean this in all seriousness, I don't mean to, you are correct. You're entirely correct. Unbelievably normal-looking, and when I say normal, I don't mean in the
mental health issues can range from minor anxiety to schizophrenia,
and they manifest themselves in a variety of ways based on a variety of circumstances that can come out of nowhere.
You've got mental health issues. My wife has mental health issues. I've got some mental health issues. We're all functional adults.
Yeah, and that is kind of the other thing. We shouldn't let people with mental health issues have guns. Can we define mental health issues a little bit more clearly then?
No, we can't, and that's the problem.
Yeah, which is always my thing about this. Whenever people get hot under the collar about it, and I'm sympathetic to some of the arguments, but can we actually define some of these things in real terms? Because we're talking about legislation. The real terms matter a lot.
Right. So, you asked me, what's my interest in Joker? I'm sort of divorcing myself from. It's kind of like watching Pennyworth for me. I just forget the comic book exists.
Okay.
And I'm taking it as what's being presented. This is sort of a modern retelling, reimagining of Taxi Driver, Raging Bull, the one man's descent into madness as the pressures of the societal climate weigh upon him and finally break his spirit. I'm interested in that sort of thing. I'm curious to see how they handle it.
I'm with you there, and I'm deeply interested in Joaquin Phoenix's performance.
Sure.
He's a tremendous actor, and I'm very curious to see what he does with it.
Yep. All right.
I think what started to bother me a little about this,
Mhm.
and I've seen some people like posturing about this, and I think the way I saw this phrased was this movie's largely going to be for the children of people who misunderstood Fight Club. And let me start with this. Fight Club's a terrible movie.
Yeah.
And probably a worse book.
We're going to be doing an on trial for Fight Club this January.
Are you trying to defend that piece of crap?
I haven't decided. I know we're also covering the sequel, Fight Club 2 comic.
Look, I for the life of me, I do not understand what people got, what about Fight Club resonated with anyone.
They romanticize the idea of being anarchistic and taking down like corporations. When the movie's big selling point for at least a third to two-thirds of it is polite society is garbage and that we should all live in fucking caves and be raw, that's attractive to people who feel displaced, don't feel like they have a place in society and are too dumb to process it properly. They're just looking for a place of belonging, and they'll take any retarded group that lends itself to an easily definable mission statement. Take down the man.
I mean, look, I'm not arguing the reality of that situation. It's how you get terrorist cells in destabilized countries, and it's how you get violent socialists here in the United States. It's an easy thing to do. It's just a terrible movie. It's not good.
Well, more on that in January. Can I finish my plugs?
Yeah.
Thank you. So we'll be looking at Joker by Brian Azzarello. We'll be talking about said Joker movie on the 8th of October. What's likely to be my favorite album of the year, we'll be reviewing Steel Panther. Rock and Roll Gods, I believe is what it's called. Sorry, Heavy Metal Rules. I was close. We'll also be reviewing, myself and Chris Bailey. We'll be reviewing Hell in a Cell, Such as It Is. And then finally, Jesse's favorite show of the season. We'll be reviewing Pennyworth on October 10th. Speaking of which, Victor Ciccato, I finally nailed him down on a fight for us to cover together. He and I will be we'll be doing alternative commentary for Alexander Usyk versus Tyrone Spong on DAZN.
Please don't say it like that.
DAZN.
Stop.
It rhymes with calzone.
Really? Wow.
Yeah. All right. I'm not going more than 2 weeks out with plugs. I generally have to cancel everything when I do that.
All right. As for myself, you can listen to me on Sundays hosting the 411 Ground and Pound MMA podcast. Last week, Jeff and I got together to talk about the catastrophic failure of UFC on ESPN Plus 17.
She blinded me with her finger.
Well, he.
Yeah.
Yeah. For those unaware, the main event ended in 15 seconds via no contest after Yair Rodriguez scraped Jeremy Stevens across the eye and gave him a corneal abrasion that has now had him medically suspended for like 4 weeks.
And speaking of terrible Mexicans, then they proceeded to throw bottles at the poor blind guy. There it is!
They threw detritus at the Mexican-American who couldn't see trying to leave the...
Jeremy Stevens is Mexican-American?
I think his mother...
that's even funnier.
Oh, yeah. Like, here's the crazy thing about this. They put, a bunch of... Because playing on nationalism is old hat in the combat sports world and fight promotion. But they kind of tried to ease into some of it here. Yair Rodriguez, Mexican, versus Jeremy Stevens, who was born in Iowa, but I can't remember if he's first or second generation. I think his mother is Mexican of some variety. So they tried to ease that. Nope, fans weren't having it. Carla Esparza, also Mexican-American, wins a crappy majority decision over Mexican Alexa Grasso, and the fans like dump beer on her as she's leaving them. Like, they were not having any of that.
Yeah.
Terrible fans. I mean, I laugh because I have to, or I'll just lose my mind.
Yep, but that's okay. The writers of
terrible.
Rambo are the racist ones. It's fine. Mexicans are perfect. So are
Terrible
blacks. So are blacks. So are Chinese. Everybody with white people. It's fine. It's fine.
Yeah. Anyway.
Continue, cisgendered male.
I hate you for that more than almost anything. Yeah, we reviewed that event. Had some good finishes, had a couple of decent fights. We previewed this coming Saturday's event. The UFC is in Denmark for the first time, so make your jokes about the Nordic countries, I suppose. And we previewed that card. It's not a good card. Look, MMA is kind of in a holding pattern until for a couple of weeks until Whitaker and Adesanya square off, and then hot diggity. Hey, it's Robert Whitaker and Israel Adesanya. Shut up and let me have this.
No, it's fine. I think I forgot to mention Pat and I are probably covering that, but we'll see if Pat's awake and not drunk.
I mean, only one of those is actually a problem for your recording.
True.
So you can listen to that. We talk about news of the week. Some fights got made. Max Holloway and Alexander Volkanovski. Just, yes. Great fight. Daniel Cormier wants to have just one more fight as a trilogy fight with Stipe Miocic. Win, lose, or draw. He says it'll be his last one. Not sure how much I believe him, but that's what he's saying. We talk a little bit about the state of the lightweight division and some news of the week, such as it is. Thursday, Mark and I will be back to talk Disenchantment Season 2. Should be interesting. Mark seems to have had a much more enjoyable time with it than I did.
Yeah, I feel like the show finally graduated to social commentary like The Simpsons did, but it only took one season, well, 2 seasons, I guess, as opposed to The Simpsons taking several seasons.
You and I are going to have to talk about that. I'm not sure I got... I mean, again, there's certainly some social commentary in there, but I did not get a tremendous amount of it.
No, I mean, it's only 10 episodes, but we'll talk.
Yeah, so tune in Thursday for that discussion, where Mark and I yell at each other about how a show that is essentially the world viewed through the eyes of a teenager. Her father's an ogre, her mother's an alien, her stepmother's an alien. Her estranged mother is a horrible witch who only wants to sacrifice her to satisfy a bargain from hell. And every bit of the outside world is magical and wonderful, but everything around her is terrible apart from her conscience, which is also twisted, and her evil impulses, which are also a little bit twisted.
Yep, it's a metaphor for the Trump administration.
Oh, shut up. Is one of your children around?
No, they're both sleeping.
God, get your son to hit you in the crotch.
Don't have to get him, he'll do it anyway.
Okay, next time he does, thank him for me.
You got it.
So tune in for that. Should be fun. Saturday I'll be covering the UFC in Denmark card. Saturday morning on the MMA Zone of 411 Mania.
And then he's going to be the Joey Styles of the Radulich Broadcasting Network and cover the Sean Porter Errol Spence fight all by his lonesome.
Don't tempt me.
I don't think you can do it. How about that?
I mean, I can't.
Oh, this went nowhere.
What did you Are you really going to try and somehow cajole me into doing something by challenging my ego?
I was trying. Apparently that was a failed plan.
Have you met my ego? It's about 2 inches tall.
I feel like John Rambo being kicked by Mexicans. It was a poor plan.
Yes, that was.
Call Pat, see if he's available. Call Victor, see if he's available.
Nah, I might just enjoy a Saturday evening to myself for once.
Why?
Because most of my Saturday evenings are 6-hour slogs through a UFC card.
You told me you get paid per event. I'm now trying to think of how many more events you can do because I want you to make more money. I've decided this is my job. I'm managing your coverage career. Let's end this fucking show. All right.
Yeah, and then next Sunday we'll have a review of that and a preview of UFC 243. Double check it. Yeah, 243. Whitaker versus Adesanya, which is a absolutely tremendous main event on paper. I am praying it holds together. So you can listen to me gush about that fight, who I think is going to win, how I think it'll play out. Jeff should be there. We'll have some back and forth. He'll summarily dismiss Adesanya. Sorry, I shouldn't speak. I shouldn't speak for Jeff.
Because he's racist?
No.
Oh.
I mean, it's a Nigerian fighting a guy. Whitaker's like half Maori, I think.
Are you done?
Sorry, I don't know where I was going with that. So yeah, tune in for that, and we'll be back here. Oh, there's no movie next week, is there?
For fuck's sake. Yeah, you're all other than the TV party. We'll be back in 2 weeks for Joker. Then we'll be back 2 weeks after that for Maleficent, and then we end the month with Zombieland Double Tap.
Did you see that Joaquin Phoenix walked out of an interview?
Yes.
That was great. Someone asked him, so do you feel like you're concerned about the potential for this movie to inspire violence? And he looked at this person and went, you're no longer you're clearly not capable of having an intelligent conversation, and just left.
You can tell he's trying to manage his career and, having to control himself, because any man worth his salt would have taken out his cock and pissed all over that interviewer. And on that note, be well, be safe, and behave.
He's in our world now, and this time, there's no escape from the Mind Flayer. Experience the most terrifying moments of Netflix's Stranger Things Seasons 2 and 3 at the world's premiere Halloween event. It's Universal's Halloween Horror Nights. Select nights September 6th through November 2nd. Save up to $52 on select nights. Visit HalloweenHorrorNights.com. Online only. Restrictions apply. Not recommended for children under 13.
With Dunkin' Go-Tos, you can get a great deal on two of your favorites, like 2 egg and cheese wraps for $2, 2 bagels with cream cheese spread for $4, and 2 bacon, egg, and cheese croissants for $5. In my opinion, it's a deal that's pretty tough to beat. That's just if you want my go-to cents. If you don't want my go-to cents, it's go too late. Dunkin' Go-Tos, a great deal for $2, $4, or $5. America runs on Dunkin'. Participation may vary. Limited time offer. Exclusions apply.